What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Forbidden Land podcast. And what an unfortunate day I chose to do this. This is going to be the politics free, fun episode. And it's really funny I chose now to do this because the comments I got on the last episode were pretty nuts. But it's also insane that I chose today because of a horrific thing that happened in Minnesota. So I'll talk about it next week. But yeah, let's do a politics-free episode. Lighten up the mood a little bit. And it's not even going to be truly politics-free because this is a tier list that I'm going to be doing that is basically how ethical and basically how ethical is a streaming service. I'm not just judging it on ethics, I'm also judging it on like the user interface and what kind of content it has on it. But I will be factoring in ethical dilemmas as well. So yeah. We're gonna do this like I've done every other tier list. And, you know, I have a list of some streaming services here and yeah. So this will be a pretty simple list. I have a list of streaming services for music and then a list of some video streaming services. So we will begin with the music ones and then make our way down. And you know, I gotta say, some of these kind of shocked me. I used to make jokes about some of these, but some of these I'm like, wow. I used to think these were like the most unethical services to use, and then the more I looked into the other ones, I was like, holy shit. Ugh. I don't know about that one, Chief. All right, let's begin. So, starting off with the absolute banger. Yeah, just the absolute just the absolutely most controversial one that we can possibly pull up on this list. That would be Spotify. Spotify is pretty notorious for being incredibly unethical when it comes to paying artists. It's notorious for being controversial for its use of AI. And yeah, I mean, a lot of people don't really like Spotify very much anyways. The user interface people find a bit childish and cartoony. Not very easy to use. They change up the look of it every like 6 months because, you know, those software engineers have to justify being paid. And they don't pay artists. Yeah, they don't pay artists. And they use AI. So where would I put this on the tier list of how ethical and good this streaming service is? I'm going to put this one at a C for right now. That might change. Simply because of the other ones on the list, I have to gauge where I'm going to put the others. But for right now, we're going to put it at a C. All right. Next up. Oh, I forgot to mention. Spotify used to also would have been lower a few months ago. Spotify used to have something called high quality, which is, or it still has it, but that used to be like the highest setting you could choose. And it was like the highest streaming level setting. where it was not very good. It was like 256 kilobits per second. It pretty bare minimum. And now they offer lossless. 2 or 3 months ago, whenever they added lossless quality, if we had done this tier list before all of that, this would have been at like a D, because the audio quality on Spotify used to sound like absolute garbage. And as an audiophile, I much more preferred to just play off of CDs directly because I have good speakers. I wonder if here, can I even show? I wonder if I'd be able to show the like audio setup I've got over here. Holy crap, dude. Let me see if I can like zoom in on it or something. Oh my god. Here, I'm gonna switch the camera when I get this over there. Oh, yeah, that kind of works. So this is my audio setup. This is my audio setup over here. And right here is like a CD player that with an amp in it, so it controls the 3 speakers in the sub. And then there's a tape player and recorder right here, and a CD changer down here. There's 51 CD slots. Isn't that cool? But this is my whole audio, like beefed up audio setup over here. Pretty cool, right? God, I can't believe I just did all that just to show my audio setup. But anyways. So, Spotify used to be a lot worse. All right, next up on the list, Apple Music. And we're also going to do if there's certain company crossover on this list, I will be doing both the video streaming and the music streaming. So the next one on this list is Apple Music. Apple Music is fine in terms of usability. I know it has a lossless quality, a somewhat okay UI. Back when I used to like somewhat use it, when they would give me free trials for owning an iPhone, it wasn't anything special, if I'm being honest. I mean, it was kind of annoying, especially because I didn't have unlimited data. I had to like download everything. And then once you stop using Apple Music, they just kind of wipe everything. I don't know. I'm not like a huge fan of using Apple Music. Apple TV is kind of the same way. I'm not a big fan of their UI, but I know they have some like okay shows on there. A couple good shows. But the big thing is it ethical, folks? Is it ethical to use Apple Music? Apple in general. Apple in general allegedly uses child labor in the DRC for cobalt mining. Now that's according to Amnesty International, by the way, if you want to look that up. Now, is using child labor in the Congo for cobalt mining unethical? Yeah, probably. They've also been accused of using child labor in Chinese assembly facilities. So child labor, folks, is child labor ethical? Well, if we're going off of ethics, holy crap, we're going off ethics. Probably not. I'm gonna stick Apple Music down here. I will say child labor is a tad bit worse than Spotify. Just saying. Also, I'm gonna put Apple TV on this list too. Apple TV has the exact same, um, issues as Apple Music in the sense that it's owned by Apple. So child labor has to be factored in. However, I'm not a big Apple TV fan in general. And so I'm going to put Apple TV lower. This is where the content part comes in, where I just don't really care for anything that's on Apple TV. So ethically, both pretty bad. But in terms of content, I don't really care for Apple TV all that much. At least Apple Music has Apple exclusive music, unlike Spotify. How else can I listen to Led Zeppelin by Tame Impala? I can't do it on Spotify, but I can do it on Apple. All right, next. This one is the big one. This is the one I've been wanting to talk about. One of the reasons why I even wanted to do this tier list. This tier list came about because we were discussing ethical music services. And I had the big three in my mind, Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And I laid it out in a really simple way where I went, Spotify, if in terms of death and destruction, Spotify takes the cake in terms of not doing those things. However, Spotify is special because it uses AI, and that's harmful to the environment. They also don't pay artists, which is, against everything I stand for on a labor perspective. However, YouTube is in its own special league. Because not only does YouTube use AI, seeing as how the YouTube CEO just came out and said that they're going to develop a feature that you can generate YouTube shorts with with your likeness. So not only are they destroying the environment with AI, YouTube Music in general is just a dog shit streaming service and has led to death and destruction. That's what makes it unique from Spotify and Apple Music, in the sense that YouTube as a company, Alphabet, Google, they have contract deals with Israel. Google specifically has a cloud deal with Israel regarding a warning system that alerts Israeli officials when girl. Cute. Hi. Little interruption. I might honestly just keep that in. That was a cute interaction. They have an early warning system that alerts Israeli officials when data is being requested by investigators or a foreign judiciary. And this goes for other big tech companies too, by the way, the cloud deal. But specifically Google and Alphabet, its parent company, they signed a $45 million deal to run propaganda for Israel to deny the famine happening in Gaza. So YouTube Music, in terms of ethics, is in the sewer, in the dumpster even. And to just add a bit more fuel to the fire, let's say they weren't doing any of that stuff. Let's compare the quality of YouTube Music. One, I have never liked YouTube Music in the sense that, look, if you have a brand new YouTube account, it might be fine for you to use YouTube Music. You can find songs, you can make playlists like you can on any other platform. That's not the problem, if you have a brand new account. But if you have an account on YouTube that is pushing 13 years old and you get YouTube Music, I have this problem where YouTube Music includes music that's on YouTube. That's not just stuff that publishers have published. It means that like when you're listening to a song, you can also watch the music video. However, something like Shmo Yoho music is on there. So like if you were 12 and you were liking Minecraft parodies back then and putting them in playlists, or listening to like those old spliced joke songs like the Gregory Brothers / Shmo Yoho used to do. I think they still do it. That shit will all be in there. Anything that was labeled as music as a YouTube video goes into your algorithm and into your playlists. It's like if I created my Spotify account and right off the jump, my liked songs was just full of shit I had listened to as a kid. I want a clean slate, man. I also don't want to have to make a whole new YouTube account to use YouTube Music. I want them to be joined together. I just think that when they made this platform, it would have just been easier to have your YouTube Music profile be a clean slate off the jump. And look, this platform has been around for 10 years now. I remember you could get YouTube Music. I was a freshman in high school. If you downloaded this app onto your phone, they'd give you a free month of YouTube Red. And so I ended up downloading it so I could get a free month of YouTube Red. So I could watch Vsauce and the Minefield Show, and I could also download YouTube videos onto my phone. Ironically, I was downloading Monster Cat music onto my YouTube app, and I wasn't using YouTube Music at all. I was just using it as a free trial platform. But I'm going to be putting this in F tier because in addition to it not being good for older YouTube accounts, the quality is awful. YouTube video audio quality is pretty bad. It's like baseline streaming quality, like what Spotify has. I think it's locked in at like 160 kilobit per second, 160 to about 256 depending on the video. And that's basic streaming quality. That transfers over to YouTube Music. They don't have, and I looked this up to make sure, they don't have a lossless option. They just don't. So in terms of like usability, I don't recommend YouTube Music. In terms of ethics, they are horrible. They are terrible. Yeah, let's go ahead and throw up YouTube, TV and premium, because YouTube as a platform has premium. So we'll just say YouTube as a video streaming platform. Nowadays, YouTube as a video streaming platform, it's like an E tier. They still have all the ethical abhorrent behavior of Google, obviously, like YouTube Music does. But I will say, like, it's not as bad as YouTube Music. It's not as useless as YouTube Music is. But it's still not great. And that it still suffers from the same ethical dilemmas as YouTube Music does. All right, next one. Amazon Music and Prime Video. We'll start with Amazon Music. I'm not a big fan of Amazon Music in general because it just doesn't, it's just not very easy to use. And I used to have an Amazon Echo, and I would try to listen to music off of it, and it would work sometimes, and then other times it would start blasting like fart noises. So, serves it right that the Echo got destroyed when I moved last year. It didn't get destroyed. It just has a huge crack in it now, and I haven't plugged it in over a year. Amazon Music, so like the cloud deal with Google, Google signed that deal with Amazon. So Amazon has that exact same cloud deal with Israel, where there's an early warning system for investigators. I'm going to say Amazon Music can go here, in the sense that it, oh geez, dogs are barking. It's aiding war crimes, but they're not running, as far as I'm aware, they're not running propaganda for starving children in Gaza. Am I getting barked at for being out here? This little dog, man, is gonna drive me fucking crazy. This little dog. Amazon is a corporation in general. I will say that that is one of the bigger ethical dilemmas here, is Amazon as a corporate entity. Would it not be pretty awful to use Amazon? And that is true. That is indeed true. I'm going to say that Apple and Amazon are on a similar level. Child labor, pretty bad. Exploiting capitalism to its fullest exploitative extent, pretty bad. Two sides of the same multi-sided coin. Both are using the worst parts of capitalism to its advantage, and people suffer as a result. So I'd say they're on about the same level. But this one's just slightly worse in the sense that it's actively aiding Israel's legal system, saving them from indictment and whatnot. If you're wondering why they have deals like that, it's because of Google's cloud servers and Amazon's AWS servers. If there's information for the Israeli government or Israeli agencies, and they are on those servers, then that's the whole reason why they have that contract set up. Commit war crime with safeguards. Sorry. Tidal. Tidal is an interesting one, in the sense that I actually kind of like it. This is going to be the first and one of the only decent streaming services that goes on this list. Let me find a good picture to put on the list. Use this one. More pleasing on the eyes. All right, Tidal. I didn't have to yell, but good Lord. So, where would I put Tidal on this tier list? Tidal has good audio quality. It has lossless and flat quality, and has Dolby Atmos. Not bad. It's got a not so user-friendly user interface, which is not great. It's way more expensive, but one, it's expensive because of that audio quality. Streaming at that quality is a pretty costly endeavor. It's why YouTube's been floating the idea of charging premium for 4K quality on videos, which is insane, by the way. But that's kind of why they're considering it. But the other reason it's more expensive is because they actually pay their artists pretty fairly, or at least better than the others. And as far as I'm aware, Tidal doesn't have any crazy international war crime level controversies. So I'm gonna say Tidal goes in the A tier. Tidal goes in the A tier. So far, this is our best one. And you might think how is that not the S tier level? Well, one, the UI, but also two, you'll come to find out that even though these companies are paying artists a little bit more fair, than their competitors. A subscription-based system is just not great. A subscription-based system is very flawed. The other streaming service, which I've never heard of, by the way, something called Qbuzz or something like that. I'm not really sure. I've never heard of this one. But I've been told that it is basically just a more like a slightly more ethical title, maybe. You can, it's still pretty expensive. They pay their artists, and it has better audio quality than like the average, than the average streaming service. So yeah, I've never really heard of this one. Let me see if I can get a good logo to pull from. Yeah, we'll just use the Wikipedia one. So this one I'm gonna put. Oh, that's not a good one. Whatever. I'm gonna put that one right here. We'll say it's fine. I just don't know much about it, and I didn't write a whole lot of points for myself. But it seems that it's pretty much similar to Tidal. Can I get like a picture of what the UI looks like? I want to know what this looks like. Let's see. Oh, interesting. I mean, I guess that's fine. I think I would hate it, to be honest. If I'm being honest, I think I would hate to use this. There's just something that feels so weird about it. It looks like an old streaming service from like 10 years ago. All right. Let's move on. Bandcamp. Ah, yes, Bandcamp. Bandcamp is probably it's probably the most ethical streaming service on this entire list. Yeah, Bandcamp is probably the most ethical one on this entire list. Simply for the fact that you pay for music directly. In terms of usability, I mean, I've used Bandcamp, and I would say it's easier to just download the music off of there and listen to it yourself, like locally instead of streaming it. But I can see why a lot of people find the UI to be a little clunky, to be a little difficult to navigate. But I feel like all of that is trumped by the fact that artists are paid what they're owed because you're paying them directly. You're basically doing what people used to do almost 30 years ago, which would be go to a physical music store or go to somewhere like Target or Walmart and buy the music physically. That audio setup I showed you in the cabinet. Here, I'm gonna switch to this dog ass camera. I'm not moving it again. Sorry. In that cabinet right here, where you see this box of light bulbs, next to the box of light bulbs is just a bunch of CDs. And underneath my coffee table next to me is like a full basket of cassettes. In the closet in my bedroom is a full crate of vinyls. If you want the most ethical way realistically to listen to music, it is just owning physical copies of the music. And this will also go for like video streaming. If you're watching a TV show on streaming, it's far more ethical to buy the physical media of the show that you're watching or of the movie that you're watching. Way better. This is the whole idea behind why there were strikes in the late 2000s in regards to, basically how will home media sales contribute into like contracts for writers and stuff like that. So that's kind of the whole idea. is that physical media, and in Bandcamp's case, your own copy of a digital piece of media, you're paying directly for that. So that would technically be the exact same thing as buying a CD of it. And actually, on Bandcamp, you can, a lot of the time, buy physical copies of media. I bought, a vinyl from Infinite Third off Bandcamp. I've bought CDs off of Bandcamp. I only mentioned Infinite Third specifically because he's the only person I've ever bought a vinyl from off of Bandcamp. All my other vinyls come from local shops that sell them. But yeah, I would say Bandcamp is probably the most ethical music streaming service so far, and probably on this list in general. I was gonna include Deezer. You know, I was gonna the French. Yeah, Deezer is a French streaming service. I was gonna include them. They seem to pay artists a bit more fair than the other competitors, and they claim that they're anti AI. However, I've seen some debate about whether or not that's actually true. So I will be excluding Deezer because I just don't think enough Americans know about it, which is a bit unfortunate because a lot of my podcast listeners, I believe, actually listen on Deezer. So sorry, guys. If I had to rank Deezer on this list, I'd probably put it at like B. I'm not a big fan of Deezer's UI, and also the AI claim is a bit dubious. So yeah, but I'm not gonna rank it on here. Music streaming. We already did YouTube. We've already done Amazon. Or no, we didn't do Amazon. Amazon Prime Video. Amazon Prime Video. Ethically, it's on the same level as Amazon Music. In terms of usability and content's a big one. Notably, there is nothing to watch on YouTube pretty much that you can't find in other places. Not talking about videos, by the way. I'm talking about like rentable media and the premium exclusives and all that stuff. A lot of that stuff, not the greatest. Even like the YouTube Red originals were I only really liked Minefield, if I'm being honest. But Amazon Prime Video has The Boys. It has Reacher. I like those. It had House on it. I don't think it has House anymore, but I used to watch a lot of House on Amazon Prime Video. I'm going to put it at the low end of C. And I'll move it if I have to. But I'm going to put it at the low end of C for right now. Yeah. Let's talk about Disney. Disney Plus, to be specific. What to say? We all know what Disney's stance is on a lot of stuff. Very obviously Disney supports Israel to some extent, whether they'll say it out loud or not. But I don't know. Disney as a company is hyper capitalist, and they've done a lot of stuff that I don't agree with. One of their more famous stories is suing that family over putting Mickey Mouse on a grave marker. Scarlett Johansson called them out a few years ago, and then they fired her. Yeah, I'm gonna say Disney Plus we'll go here. You know, content wise, they have all the Star Wars stuff that I like, but they also represent probably the worst parts of capitalism. Um, and that's like hyper consumerism and labor violations and all that stuff. So I'm just not a big fan of them. So then that brings us to all of their subsidiaries like Hulu and ESPN Plus. Hulu, I'm going to put it in B. Has the same ethical dilemmas as Disney, but they have live TV. You know, I have talked about it before. I used to watch a lot of cop shows on Hulu. So that's why it's going so high. ESPN Plus. Let's pull ESPN Plus up. Oh, Jesus. Okay. ESPN Plus. I'm going to put that one in the E tier. No, I'm going to put it in the D tier. I'm not a big sports guy. I know that seems unfair, but this is my tier list in my opinion, so I don't really care. Netflix. Oof. So this one's a big one. These next couple will be big ones that definitely display a gross amount of ethical dilemmas. Actually, let me start with HBO. Let's start with HBO Max first. HBO Max. So HBO Max used to be the most goated streaming service of them all. Back when it was the purple HBO Max, you know, pre David Zaslav. They had a great UI. I loved all the DC animated stuff. I liked what they were doing with HBO Max. Really good streaming service back then. If I were to rank this in 2019 and 2020, I would put HBO Max probably either up in B or A. However, under David Zaslav, they have pissed me off so fucking much, canceling all these movies and shows, and just the absolutely anti art nature of their CEO has made me not like HBO as much as I used to. And so if I were to rank it now, I'd probably put it down here with Prime Video. Now, the reason why I wanted HBO to go first is because Netflix is trying to acquire HBO right now. Now, Netflix has some decent stuff. They have a lot of good documentaries. They've got Stranger Things. You know, that I was going to say 13 Reasons Why is a joke, but good Lord, I can't even say that. But their CEO, look, I have like childhood nostalgia with Netflix. Same with Hulu, which kind of influences why I put it up here. You could put Hulu on the Wii. You know how monumental that was back then? But I rented Star Wars Revenge of the Sith off of Netflix's DVD service. That was how I saw that movie the first time. So, you know, I do have some nostalgic bias with Netflix. However, their CEO saying shit like, nobody wants to go to the movies anymore. Like, the future of movies is not in the theater, it's on your tiny ass TV at home. You know, them allegedly having policies about characters have to keep re-explaining the plot and exposition because people watching are looking at their phones. Just some of the worst bits of anti-art capitalism I've seen. And they're trying to acquire HBO. The nature of their shows have gone downhill. They cancel shows after one season constantly. So if I have to rank Netflix now, I'm going to put it in D. But back then, oh, and also they took Dexter off of Netflix. So that really solidifies my ranking. The fact that they took Dexter off. But they've done too much. now. Like they've ruined it. They've ruined Netflix, and now they're trying to acquire HBO Max. Yet another streaming service. They're just gonna absolutely skyrocket straight down into hell. I mean, I just don't. I don't know. I mean, you either have the death of cinema buying HBO, or you have the next one that we're going to talk about, which is the death of cinema with the Trump administration owning HBO Max. Paramount Plus, obviously owned by Paramount, but owned by the Ellison family. They just, took over CBS. Or Paramount has had CBS for a long time. But I mean, like, the Trump administration has now officially captured CBS. And they've put Barry Weiss in there. And Paramount Plus in general, take all the politics out, Paramount Plus in general sucks. Yeah, they've got SpongeBob, I guess. But the way that they've, like, cataloged everything, and then also how they killed Comedy Central's streaming service. Just this huge wealth of archival footage of old shows, especially like the Daily Show archive. Their UI is trash, and God forbid we have quality changing settings on this app. I was watching Dexter Resurrection, right? Because this is the only platform you can find Dexter on now. Dexter Resurrection, I would have to download it onto my device so I could watch it offline, just so I could get it to stay in HD quality. Without doing that, it would like drop to like less than 144p. So blurry, I couldn't even tell what was going on. Which, that's not a big deal when I'm watching Dexter, because I've already watched Dexter. So I'm just watching a rerun. I already know what's happening. It's annoying, but it's not the end of the world. If I'm watching Dexter Resurrection, a brand new show, I don't want that to happen. So that on its own ranks it pretty low. But I would say the fact that they are now just a mouthpiece for the Trump administration, the fact that Barry Weiss and CBS have been killing like 60-minute segments and stuff like that to cover for the Trump administration, I would say that I have to rank it probably down here, since it's basically just state-run media for the federal government. So yeah, who will own HBO Max? Anti-cinema, anti-art capitalist freaks? Or the state-run media apparatus, right-wing mouthpiece, Trump-owned Paramount? Who will it be? Who else do I have on this list? Oh my God, that's it. That's all of them. That's all the ones I was going to rank. Am I missing any? I keep thinking I'm missing some. I know there's like Peacock. But the fact that I left Peacock off of this should tell you that it's such a forgettable, it's just such a forgettable platform. They've got Psych and House, and like that's it. It's the only stuff I enjoy watching on there. Yeah, it looks like Peacock is the only one I left off. I don't think there are any other streaming platforms that I'm missing here. I know Discovery is one of them. Discovery Plus, although I'm pretty sure Discovery Plus doesn't exist anymore. Let's see. Do I still have a bookmark to Discovery Plus? I do. No, Discovery Plus does exist. What? Discovery Plus is dog shit. There you go. That's all you need to know. I would rank it F. Or it's just a shitty platform. You want to watch Shark Week? Ugh. Beat Bobby Flay. Good lord. Yeah, that's the type of shit you're watching on Discovery Plus. All right, yeah, I guess that's it. So here's my tier list. In terms of ethics and quality of streaming service and all that fun jazz, I would say this is definitely the best ranking I could have done. So, what's the verdict? Well, if you want to ethically, to the fullest extent, listen to music, use Bandcamp. If you want to ethically consume movies and watch TV, it's time to buy a DVD player or a Blu-ray player. Which, if you own a gaming console, you already have one, unless it's a Switch. Yeah, I mean, just own the physical copies. You have to go out there and buy the DVD, which I will say, unfortunately, in a lot of cases, you would have to go on Amazon to find those and order them off Amazon, which in itself is technically unethical. So then you would have to go to like Best Buy. There is no ethical consumption under capitalism. There will be somebody getting fucked somewhere along the way when you're purchasing something. And that's just, or when you're consuming something. And that's just the nature of how capitalism works. You have to fuck somebody over in order to turn a profit. That's just how it goes. So, yeah, that's the list. Pretty good. Personally, I do enjoy owning DVDs. I do enjoy owning CDs and whatnot. As you can see, I do own quite a few DVDs. I have the first 3 seasons of SpongeBob, some other cartoons. I have all the Spider-Man movies. Looks like except for the sequel to Spider-Verse. I have the Dark Knight trilogy. Oh, and I have all the Star Wars movies, including the first 5 seasons of the Clone Wars. And then you can see all my games and stuff back here. I mean, I love owning physical copies of media. So that would be probably the most ethical way to consume that kind of media. If there was a Bandcamp for movies and shows, that'd be great. And technically, YouTube offers renting capability, but then you'd be supporting Google. So that's my point. All right, fellas, be safe during this storm. That's not going to happen apparently down here in Georgia, but if you're farther north than me, then good luck. Thanks for watching. Thanks for consuming my opinions. I will be back on Friday with my more political focused content. And yeah, if you want to support this podcast, you can go on patreon.com/forbiddenland pod. And you can listen to this podcast audio only on platforms like Apple Podcasts and your Samsung fridge. There is kind of a reason why I stopped mentioning Spotify as much, and that's why, because of the ethicalness of Spotify. But it turns out Spotify is probably one of the more tame, ethically wise streaming services, so who knows? But yeah, could be on your Samsung smart fridge though. Always keep that in mind. Anyways, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.